As a female leadership commentator, I'd frame this as a story about what real authority looks like when power refuses to listen. Zara has no protection, no crowd, and no guarantee she'll survive speaking up. Yet she stands in a room built to silence her and forces everyone to face the truth. This is not just a military rescue story. It is a lesson in courage, competence, and calm leadership under pressure.
Remove her from my briefing room. Commander Brett Holloway's command erupted over the public radio frequency like a physical blow. I do not care what it takes. Get this individual out. Every soldier at Camp Lemonnier heard his words. Every animal handler and every single canine on the entire base registered the order. What Holloway did not realize was that as he spoke, 29 German shepherds simultaneously lifted their heads. This was not because of a handler's signal, but because one woman had spent 3 years forging a connection that no rank could ever demand, and she was standing right outside his door. If this story already has you hooked, please subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you do not miss a single update. Let me know what city you are watching from in the comments. I would love to see how far this amazing story reaches. To truly understand what Zara Cole did, we have to go back to the very beginning, to see the kind of person she was. The meeting was set for 5:30 in the morning, and Lieutenant Zara Cole was already in her seat when the first person arrived. She was only 22 years old. Her dark hair was tied back in a simple bun, and she wore a plain olive shirt and camouflage pants, her normal outfit for morning training. She was not trying to impress anybody. Her job was to analyze the mission, Operation Clean Sweep, and she had dedicated the last 72 hours to studying every report, every satellite image, and every contractor document related to the plan. She understood the operation better than the man who had created it. Commander Brett Holloway walked into the room at exactly 5:32. He was in his mid-40s and had the smug confidence of a former high school quarterback who never quite moved on. He dropped his folder on the podium without a glance at anyone, activated the tactical screen, and started his presentation. Operation Clean Sweep will be active in 40 hours. He stated, "Our target is a confirmed location in the Eastern District where 14 civilians are being held captive. Our intelligence shows 32 enemy fighters located in 2 separate buildings. We will advance through the northern corridor, retrieve the hostages, and be gone in less than 40 minutes. Zara studied the map, her gaze fixed on the northern route. Then she looked at it again, this time with more focus. She raised her hand, but Holloway continued talking. The main escape route goes directly through the bar market area. We will have a 3-vehicle team waiting and ready to... Commander. Her voice was level, yet it cut through the room like a blade. I believe there is an issue with that escape route. Holloway stopped talking. He shot her a look of pure annoyance, like someone swatting at a fly. Lieutenant Cole. Yes, sir. This is an operational briefing, not an open debate. I understand that, sir. However, the northern road goes directly through the Bakar market. On a Tuesday at 7 in the morning, that market will be filled with over 400 vendors and at least 1,200 customers. A 3-vehicle convoy escaping through there will not help us go unnoticed. It will make us a massive target." The room went quiet. Holloway fixed her with a long, icy glare. The intelligence report approved that route. That report was completed on a Friday, sir. The data used was collected on a Saturday. The BAR market is only open from Tuesday through Saturday. The number of people present on a Saturday is nothing like a Tuesday. I have the updated traffic data here, if you would like to see it. Near the back of the room, a man shifted his weight. Senior Chief Darren Wyatt, who had been in charge of canine operations at Lemonnier for 4 years, looked up. He did not speak, but he was suddenly listening very carefully. With deliberate slowness, Holloway placed his laser pointer on the table. "Where did you get this from?" "From the very same contractor file your intelligence group used, sir. It is from a company called Meridian Analytics, on page 47. The notes on the analysis clearly state it was collected on a Saturday." Holloway's jaw muscles clenched. And you believe a small note on page 47 is enough to challenge a fully approved operational plan. I believe a small note on page 47 confirms that 1,400 civilians will be in our line of fire when we need to be fast and unseen. That feels very important to me, sir. The tension in the room grew thicker. A younger soldier, Marcus Webb, 26 years old and just back from his second tour, glanced at the man sitting next to him. He did not say a word, but his expression revealed everything. Holloway stood up straighter, pulling himself to his full height. Lieutenant Cole, this mission has been green-lit by the highest authorities. Your comment is noted, but it does not change the orders. We will execute the plan as I have outlined it. Zara met his gaze. Sir, if we follow this plan and run into trouble in that market, we will not be able to tell enemies from civilians. We will be handing them a major advantage. They will hide among the crowd. That is a speculative risk, Lieutenant. It is a mathematical certainty, sir. The road narrows to just 40 meters at one point. A gunfight there with 1,400 civilians is not a risk. It is a guaranteed catastrophe. Holloway's voice went low. It became quiet with the sort of forced calm men in power use just before they crush dissent. Lieutenant Cole, you are dismissed. Zara's face remained neutral. Sir, I want you to leave this room now and wait for me outside. We will address your behavior when this briefing is finished. She locked eyes with him for 3 full seconds. Then she shut her binder, slid her chair under the table, and stood. Everyone in that room had their eyes on her. 21 soldiers, 4 analysts, and 2 other officers watched as a 22-year-old lieutenant, the only one who had done her job correctly, was forced to leave. She walked into the hallway, and the door clicked shut behind her. She was by herself in the corridor, where she took a slow, deep breath. She let the anger well up inside her, and then she let it fade, a control she had worked hard to develop. It took her 2 years of strict discipline and 1 very difficult deployment to learn how to feel an emotion without ever letting it surface. 30 seconds later, Senior Chief Darren Wyatt was standing beside her. He had come out of a side entrance and approached her quietly, his arms crossed. You read that entire Meridian report, didn't you? Every last page, she said. And the part at the end. Wyatt gave a slow nod. He was a solid man with a shaved head and a faint scar that ran from his brow down to his jawline. With 2 decades in the service, he chose every word with intention, knowing each one mattered. You are not incorrect, Cole. I am aware of that. That is not what I am saying. What I am saying is that you are right, and he knows it, and that fact is going to cause a problem. She looked directly at him. For who? Wyatt dodged her question. Instead, he asked, do you know that Meridian Analytics has provided the intel for every major mission out of this base for the last 14 months? That was something she did not know. She stored the information away. And are you aware, he added, that during those same 14 months, 3 separate missions have gone completely wrong for reasons nobody can figure out? She became completely still. What exactly are you saying, Senior Chief? He glanced back toward the briefing room door before looking at her again. I am saying you just found a very important loose thread, Lieutenant. And I am also saying you should be incredibly careful about how you decide to pull it. Then he turned and went back inside. Zara stood in the quiet hallway for 4 minutes before the situation imploded. A sharp sound came from the radio on the wall. It was the general announcement channel, which was broadcast to every operations center, every handler post, and every security gate on the camp. Commander Brett Holloway's voice came through, crisp and commanding. All call signs, this is Holloway. I need 2 security officers to report to the main briefing hallway immediately. I have a junior officer who needs to be escorted from my base of operations. Handle it. The words seemed to hang in the air with a physical presence. Zara heard them clearly. She did not move a muscle, absorbing the full weight of the public insult. And at that exact moment, an event unfolded that Commander Holloway could never have imagined. It was a factor he was unable to account for, because it involved a kind of loyalty that his authority had never earned. At the canine kennels 40 meters away, a German shepherd named Remy raised his head. He had been sleeping near his handler, a 24-year-old specialist named Diego Flores, his partner for the past 18 months. Remy had not been given an order. His handler had given no sign. But the dog stood up, turned to face the hallway, and stared directly at the spot where Zara stood. Flores looked from his dog to the empty corridor, then back at his dog. "What is it that you sense?" he whispered. From a different canine station, 2 more shepherds got to their feet. Then 3 more stood up at the outer gate. Every single one of their handlers saw it happen. Wyatt came out of the side door again, moving with much more urgency. His face was like stone. "You heard that?" he asked her. "I heard it," Zara replied. He broadcast that on the public channel. "I know." Wyatt's voice was low and grim as he looked at her. "Cole, in 20 years of service, I have never once heard a commander speak about another officer that way on an open radio. Never. What he just did was not just an order to leave a room. He tried to humiliate an officer in front of everyone," Zara said softly. "I see what is happening, Senior Chief. What is your plan?" She glanced down the long hallway. Flores was there with Remy. The dog's gaze remained fixed on her, its golden eyes calm and knowing, as if it sensed the truth. "I am staying put," she said with conviction. "I will not be moved." After studying her, Wyatt gave a slight nod. He keyed his radio to the handler frequency and gave a simple command. "All units, converge on the corridor." For the remainder of his service, Commander Brett Holloway would be unable to account for the next 4 minutes. From doorways, stairwells, and adjacent halls, 29 operators emerged. They came from the East Barracks, the supply warehouse, and the backup intelligence hub. Each one had heard the public broadcast. Each one knew Zara Cole. Each one believed that some values are greater than rank. One of those values is standing by when a senior officer unjustly humiliates a subordinate for telling the truth. They formed up in the corridor right behind her. Silence filled the air. No words were necessary. The presence of 29 operators sent its own powerful message. At their feet, a line of German shepherds sat alert, their eyes on the door. They stood in composed readiness. The radio crackled with Holloway's voice once more. "Report from my security team?" Silence was the only answer. At the far end of the corridor, the door opened, and Commander Brett Holloway entered, stopping short at the sight before him. He was frozen. His gaze passed over the operators, then the canines. Finally, he focused on Zara Cole, standing at the center with a folder tucked under her arm, her face unsettlingly serene. "What is the meaning of this?" he asked sharply. Zara held his stare. "You requested a response, sir. This is it." It took a lot to shake Commander Brett Holloway. He had dedicated 23 years to the armed forces, learning to remain steadfast as everything around him crumbled. Yet, in that corridor, faced with 29 operators and their dogs all watching him with the same silent, unwavering resolve, a feeling he had not experienced in years washed over him. The ground beneath his feet felt unsteady. He regained his composure almost immediately. Men like him always find a way. He squared his shoulders and pointed at Zara. "Lieutenant Cole, this gathering is not authorized. I command everyone here to go back to your duties now." Not a single person stirred. Not one operator, not one handler, and certainly not a dog. Holloway's teeth ground together. "I gave you an order. Return to your stations." Senior Chief Darren Wyatt stepped out from the formation. His steps were measured and confident, the kind of assurance that comes from a long career of tested courage. He halted a short distance from Holloway, his gaze unwavering. "Sir, respectfully, you issued a demeaning order on a public channel for the entire base to hear. Everyone here listened. This is not some unsanctioned gathering. It is a direct consequence of your choices." Holloway's tone turned icy. "Senior Chief Wyatt, you are very close to making a career-ending decision." "I have made worse," Wyatt responded calmly. From somewhere in the group behind Zara, a stifled chuckle could be heard. 3 rows back stood Marcus Webb, the young operator from earlier, arms folded and expression calm. His eyes, however, were sharp and focused. Holloway turned his attention back to Zara. "Do you call this loyalty? This whole group protecting you?" "No, sir," she replied. "I call this accountability. They are not the same thing. You are a 22-year-old lieutenant who stormed out of a secret meeting and caused all this chaos. You ordered me out of that meeting, sir, on an open channel, immediately after I pointed out a critical safety issue on the northern exit path. That issue was assessed and deemed irrelevant." "By whom, sir?" "You waved it off in under 4 seconds without even glancing at my report. That is a dismissal, not an assessment." Holloway closed the distance between them. He stood a good 8 inches over her, a height advantage he frequently used to dominate others. "Lieutenant, this is your final opportunity to stand down, compose yourself, and follow the established command structure." Zara held her ground. "And this is your one opportunity, sir, to tell these 29 operators and their partners why Meridian Analytics has been the sole intelligence provider for this base for 14 months, and why 3 of those operations resulted in classified disasters." A profound silence fell over the corridor. It was the kind of hush that happens when an entire room stops breathing. Holloway's expression changed. It was a subtle flicker, invisible to an untrained eye, but the 29 experts in reading human behavior saw it clearly. The look in his eyes had transformed. It was no longer anger. It was something closer to fear. Standing with Remy, Diego Flores was the first to notice. He shot a look at Wyatt, who had also caught it. "Where did you get that intel?" Holloway demanded. His tone had changed completely. The command was gone, replaced by a strained, guarded quality. "From you, sir," Zara stated. "I mentioned Meridian Analytics and 3 botched operations. You never refuted it. It was a brilliant tactical maneuver, one of the finest any of them had ever witnessed." Webb exchanged a look with the operator beside him, an unspoken promise to never forget this. Holloway took a quick, sharp inhale. He pulled his shoulders back. His mind was made up. "This discussion is over. Lieutenant Cole is now on administrative leave while her conduct is investigated. Wyatt, be in my office within the hour. Everyone else is dismissed." He pivoted and re-entered the room. It was not a place for rest. It was a room with a secure phone line he used to dial a number, not found in any official base records. The people in the corridor were unaware, but Remy sensed that something was wrong. The dog was trained to pick up on stress and chemical changes. As the door latched, he swiveled his head to focus on it, just as he would track a potential danger. Diego Flores saw his dog's reaction but said nothing. Wyatt turned to Zara. "Administrative leave. I caught that. He is going to bury this in bureaucracy before his superiors hear what he said." "Then we have to get word to someone above him immediately," she responded. Wyatt's expression was a mixture of admiration and concern. "Cole, do you understand the implications of what you are suggesting?" "I am suggesting you make a call, Senior Chief." "No, I am asking if you grasp the consequences of that call." She met his gaze squarely. "I grasp that 14 civilians are trapped in a building, with rescue planned in 40 hours. I also grasp that following the current northern route strategy will lead to needless deaths. I grasp that somebody with a monetary stake in this operation wants the plan to proceed unchanged. And I grasp that everyone standing here heard Brett Holloway humiliate me over the radio, yet none of them left." She paused for effect. "So yes, Senior Chief, I understand precisely what comes next." Wyatt considered this for a second. He then pulled out his private mobile phone. Not his military radio or his issued device, but his own. He selected a contact and initiated the call. Webb leaned over to the operator next to him, a seasoned pro named T.J. Garrett with 14 years of service and 4 tours. "Who is getting the call?" Garrett replied without looking away. "Someone beyond Holloway's influence." The call itself lasted only 45 seconds. Wyatt was brief. He provided a name and a date. He mentioned an open broadcast, Meridian Analytics, and the northern exit path. He listened for half a minute, said, "Understood, sir," and ended the call. He turned to Zara. "You get 2 hours." 2 hours for what? Before a very senior person begins making discreet inquiries. Then, things are going to get noisy. She nodded. "Then we will not waste a minute of it." That period was later labeled by Holloway at his tribunal as an unsanctioned parallel mission development meeting. In reality, it was Zara Cole, 7 operators, 4 canine teams, and Senior Chief Wyatt in the Auxiliary Intelligence Center, re-engineering Operation Clean Sweep from scratch. Zara brought up the Meridian Analytics mission plan again. She navigated directly to page 47, located a small annotation, and read it for everyone. The text stated that the foot traffic analysis was conducted on a Saturday, from 6 in the morning to 10 at night. It projected between 400 and 600 civilians in the vicinity. Webb pointed at the map. "But the op is scheduled for a Tuesday," he observed. "Tuesday is the main market day for the Bakr sector. Vendors get there at 5 in the morning. The area is most congested from 6:30 to 9 a.m. Zara's tone was resolute. "The civilian count during our mission will not be 400 to 600. She turned the page. "The actual number will be near 2,400. Garrett leaned forward, his face serious. "That is not an oversight in the details. That is an intentional falsehood." Zara nodded. "It is a falsehood someone at Meridian was counting on us to miss." From the back of the room, Flores asked, "Who actually reads to page 47 of a report?" He quickly answered his own question. "You do." Zara confirmed it with a soft, "I do." She immediately shifted focus to the secondary site, a spot Holloway's plan had overlooked entirely. She had been suspicious of it earlier, but pushed it aside. Now, she spread the satellite photos on the table for the team. "Take a look at this structure," she said, tapping the image. Meridian claimed it was a vacant warehouse with no signs of life. Garrett agreed. "It definitely seems vacant. It only seems that way if you look on a weekend," she replied. "See these shadows on the eastern side? They show another building that is not on the official blueprints. And there is one more thing." Her finger landed on a small detail in the corner of the picture. The ventilation system was recently improved. That is the kind you install for a building with people inside. Silence instantly fell over the room. Webb spoke in a low, even tone. "So our target is not where we were told." "It is very likely they are not," she agreed. "They could be in a building Meridian acted like was not there." Flores got to his feet, his body tense. If Holloway follows his plan, he will be attacking an empty building. Or worse, he is walking his team right into an ambush. The gravity of her discovery filled the space. Wyatt spoke with deliberation. "Cole, if this is true, it is not just a flawed strategy. This whole mission was set up to fail." She met his gaze. "I know. This was deliberate. This is sabotage," he stated. "I know," she repeated. Garrett tipped his head back and looked at the ceiling tiles. "We have 14 hostages and 40 hours to get them out," Zara said quietly. "And the proposed route is a death trap for our team." Webb glanced at Wyatt, Garrett, Flores, and Remy. He saw the other dog handlers lining the walls, their animals poised and silent. His eyes settled back on Zara. "All right, what is our move?" Her attention snapped back to the map. She had already formulated a new approach in her mind during Holloway's briefing. She had it ready before he was even done speaking, assembling the new plan while everyone else was absorbing the bad intel. She took a marker and began drawing the new route on the map. About 6 minutes into her explanation, the door swung open. It was not Holloway. A man in his 50s in civilian clothes stood there, wearing no rank, yet his very presence commanded the room. He paused in the doorway, taking everything in. His eyes went from the map to Zara Cole, who was briefing soldiers with a combined 29 years of experience. At last, he spoke. "Continue." "I want to hear your plan." Wyatt immediately snapped to attention. Webb straightened his posture without thinking. Garrett, a 14-year veteran, stared at the man, his initial shock turning into recognition. Zara simply held the stranger's gaze. She had no idea who this man was. In under a minute, she would learn his name. That knowledge would reshape the next 36 hours. For now, she just met his eyes and spoke clearly. "Sir, the northern approach is a death trap. The main target is a fake, and someone on this team was aware of it from the start." The man entered, pulled over a chair, and took a seat. "Prove it to me," he said. He was Rear Admiral James Corbin, and he did not fly for 14 hours from Bahrain just to mediate a minor dispute in a side room. He had traveled this far because Darren Wyatt spoke 2 specific words over a secure line that should have been decommissioned. For 11 months, James Corbin had been hoping someone would finally use them. He sat at the head of the table and heard Zara Cole out without saying a word. That act alone sent a strong message to everyone there. High-ranking officers always interrupt. It is in their nature. They ask for specifics, change the topic, or correct mistakes. Corbin did not speak. He observed her detailing the new strategy, his expression unreadable. When she was done, silence hung in the air. Corbin examined the satellite photo for a long time. He turned to Wyatt. "When was this report given to her?" 72 hours ago, sir. Holloway's people saw it first." Wyatt's face was a mask. The plan was put in for approval 6 days back. The person who approved it was Holloway's lead intel officer. "An officer who used to work for Meridian Analytics," Zara cut in. Corbin's head whipped in her direction. "Repeat that." "Captain Derek Sims, Holloway's intelligence officer, was with Meridian Analytics for 11 years before he joined the service. He is the one who approved this entire mission. The very same plan that had fake data on page 47 and a hidden building in the images." A profound quiet settled over Corbin. "Where did you find information on Sims's career history?" "It is right in his official bio, sir, on the base intranet. Almost nobody reads beyond the opening paragraph." Webb nearly made a sound of disbelief. Garrett stared intently at the tabletop. Corbin placed his palms flat on the table. He had the look of a man who had been pushing on a sealed door for a year, only to see it finally swing open. "Lieutenant Cole, are you suggesting a connection between the intel firm, the officer who signed off, and the plan itself?" "I am only presenting facts from the official files, sir." "Drawing conclusions is your responsibility, sir." It was the perfect response, and every seasoned soldier there knew it. She was not guessing or making claims without evidence. She simply provided the data and deferred to her commanding officer. Corbin and Wyatt shared a quiet, knowing look. "Where is Holloway at this moment?" Corbin questioned. "In his office, sir. He put Lieutenant Cole on administrative leave 2 hours ago. Is he aware of your presence?" "No, sir." Corbin rose to his feet. "Excellent. Let us keep that edge." He turned to Zara. "You mentioned an alternative route." "Yes, sir. Lay it out for me." She returned to the map. She moved with her usual precision, no wasted gestures or drama. She detailed a southern entry using a service road and a different exit near the eastern fence. She offered a new timeline to get the team past the riskiest area before the local market filled with people. She reviewed the proof of the hidden facility, the upgraded vents, the revealing shadows, and what was left out of the report. Corbin fired off 3 pointed questions. His inquiries showed he was not just passively hearing her out. He was testing her plan for any flaws before he would approve it. She had a ready answer for all 3 questions. He gave a single nod. "How many people will you require?" Her response was immediate. 22 soldiers and 4 canine teams. "What is the reason for 4 dog teams?" "If that hidden structure holds enemies and bombs, I need 4 dogs on the search, not 2. Remy's unit has the best detection record here. He needs to lead the way." In the back, Flores seemed to stand taller. Corbin turned to Wyatt. "Can you get a team together in 36 hours?" "I can do it in 24, sir. Make it happen." He took out his phone for a call that was over in less than 60 seconds. By the time he hung up, Operation Clean Sweep was under new leadership, and Brett Holloway was completely unaware. In that instant, the mission was transformed. What happened next, however, caught them all off guard. Captain Derek Sims entered the briefing room. He walked with the confident air of a man who assumes he belongs everywhere. He did not bother to knock and was oblivious to the tense energy, certain of his welcome. He was 3 steps inside before he noticed the Admiral. He halted so abruptly that his aide almost collided with him. The assistant sized up the situation in a heartbeat and smartly retreated from the room. Sims, however, was caught. Captain Sims was cornered. "Admiral Corbin," he began, his tone mostly even but with a hint of strain. "I did not know you were on base, sir." "That was intentional, Captain." Corbin's gaze moved around the room, passing over the map and the images. His eyes paused for a split second on the red circle marking the secret building. It was a subtle hesitation that was easy to overlook, but Zara noticed, Garrett noticed, and Wyatt had been observing every twitch from Sims. "I need you to exit the room, Captain," Corbin stated. "We will be in touch when we are ready." "Sir, this briefing is about an active mission, for which I am the designated intelligence officer. I am cleared for all clean sweep planning." "You were cleared," Corbin corrected him. "Captain, I will ask you again to leave." The air in the room grew icy. Sims stood motionless. In that brief pause, they could all see him running the numbers in his head, what he knew versus what they knew, and what his chances were. He turned and left. The door latched behind him. Webb let out a quiet breath. He is going to make a phone call the moment he is out of sight. "I know he is," Corbin replied, already holding his own phone. He was dialing the security office on base with a short, direct order. Captain Sims was about to discover his calls would not be going through today. Every call he made went unanswered. While Sims desperately tried his contacts, the camp's secure lines were quietly redirected to listeners who logged every word. Zara was oblivious to this. All she saw was a closed door, a fast-moving Corbin, and a mission unraveling before her very eyes. She centered herself on her assigned task, returning to the map. The first sign of trouble came from Flores. He was standing with his dog, Remy, who had been calmly resting for the last hour, which was typical. Around 4 minutes after Sims departed, Remy abruptly rose and stared at the door. His ears twitched, and his body tensed from a state of rest to one of high alert. It was a slight shift, but Diego Flores recognized it as clearly as his own pulse. "Remy," Flores whispered. The dog ignored him, his gaze locked on the doorway. Flores silently approached Wyatt's side. "Senior Chief." Wyatt leaned closer. "Remy is signaling toward the door." Wyatt glanced from the dog to the door. "Stress chemicals, elevated cortisol. That is his specialty." He then addressed the guard. "Inspect the hall, immediately, and be quiet about it." The guard vanished and returned in just 18 seconds. "Sims is down the hall at the East Communications Terminal." Wyatt turned to Corbin. "Sir." Corbin looked from Remy to Flores. "Your dog signaled on him?" "Yes, sir. It was a stress response. High cortisol, along with signs of deception." "Sir, he is trained to Naval Criminal Investigative Service standards. He ignores common anxiety. He signals only on the distinct physical tells of someone actively hiding something." A heavy quiet settled over the room. Corbin's tone was level. "Actively hiding something." "That is correct, sir," Garrett added from his seat. The dog found him out. The statement was a fact, not a question. It was the kind of declaration that changes everything, and everyone in the room felt the ground shift beneath them. Corbin straightened his posture and faced Zara. "Your proposal. When can you brief the entire team?" "In 2 hours," she replied. "You have 90 minutes. She gave a single nod and got to work instantly. Wyatt was on his radio, summoning the team leads. Webb was already standing before Wyatt finished speaking. In less than 10 seconds, the room went from silent observation to focused action. This is how elite teams operate when a choice is made and time is short. Amid the activity, Corbin stood by Zara for just 3 seconds. There was no praise for her discovery, No congratulations for her diligence. He simply requested a complete written report outlining every file she had flagged after noticing that one footnote. She met his eyes and said, "Yes, sir." He added, "This is not for your file. This is for an official inquiry." At that moment, she realized this was bigger than Operation Clean Sweep. It was about something much deeper, a problem that had festered for 14 months across 3 unsuccessful operations and a contractor enjoying a lucrative agreement. This entire conspiracy was brought to light by a footnote on page 47, which a lone 22-year-old lieutenant took the time to read. Roughly 40 minutes into her presentation, as Zara detailed her strategy to the team, the base intercom crackled. It was Commander Holloway. "All units, this is Commander Holloway. I am taking back command of Operation Clean Sweep, effective now. Cease all planning. Lieutenant Cole will report to my office under guard immediately." The room fell deathly quiet. Nobody moved a muscle. Zara paused for 2 seconds, glancing at the speaker on the wall. She then turned back to the map and resumed her briefing without missing a beat. Webb glanced at Garrett, who studied his own hands. Flores observed Remy. The dog remained still, his serene amber eyes fixed on Zara. In the corner, Corbin spoke quietly into his phone, his expression unreadable. By the time Holloway's voice came over the intercom again 6 minutes later, Corbin had finished his call. He stepped into the middle of the room and waited for Zara to finish her sentence. She turned to him. He announced, "Commander Holloway has been removed from his post, awaiting a formal investigation by the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. That investigation covers the Meridian Analytics contract, this briefing, and 3 previous missions." He paused for effect. "Lieutenant Cole, you are now in charge of this operation. Continue." The room was silent. Webb looked up at the ceiling. Garrett placed his hands on the table and exhaled slowly. Flores glanced at Remy, who tilted his head back, almost as if he understood the shift in command. Zara met Corbin's eyes for 3 seconds. Then she addressed the room. "We go in 32 hours. Here is our plan." The next 32 hours were the most intense of Zara Cole's entire life. She did not get a single minute of sleep. There was simply too much work to accomplish. She was leading a mission founded on deceit, reconstructing it on the fly with a team that had sided with her against their superior just yesterday. Their decision carried risks for all of them. She understood this and was determined to prove their trust was well placed. She reviewed the plan 3 times. On the 3rd pass, not for the team's benefit but for her own, she discovered a major problem with the exit strategy. It would have left 2 vehicles exposed in the same place for a full 60 seconds. She corrected the error without a word. A true leader does not announce every fix, they just solve problems. But Wyatt noticed. He always did. He approached her later and said, "Smart adjustment at the Eastern Junction." She met his gaze. Yes, that minute could have been deadly. He simply nodded, and nothing more needed to be said. 18 hours later, Webb approached her. She was at the main table, studying images of the compound for the 11th time. He sat opposite her. "Can I ask a question?" "Of course. When you saw that note on page 47, did you realize what was really going on?" She did not look up from the photo. "I knew the plan was flawed. That is not what I am asking." She finally raised her eyes to meet his. He was 26, a veteran of 2 deployments, and had a sharp, curious mind. She valued that about him. "No," she confessed. "I did not suspect deliberate sabotage. I figured it was incompetence. Someone did a sloppy job, and no one bothered to double-check. So when did you know it was something else?" "When Holloway would not even look at the evidence. I handed him the file with everything, and he brushed it off in 4 seconds flat, without even opening the cover." She paused. "An officer who has made an honest error looks very different from one who is covering up a falsehood." Holloway had the second look. Webb was silent for a few seconds. "And you recognized it." "I have spent my entire life sizing people up," she explained. It was a survival skill I mastered long before I ever put on a uniform. He did not press for details. He gave a slight nod, then rose and returned to his duties. She refocused on the screen, the conversation over. At the 26-hour mark, Corbin showed up. His determined stride told her he was not there to check her progress. He had new intelligence. And new intelligence at this point was rarely a good thing. He sat down. Over the past 8 hours, the Naval Criminal Investigative Service contacted 3 former Meridian Analytics employees. 2 of them are cooperating. She waited. The northern approach was no mistake, he said. They intentionally used traffic information from a Saturday to minimize civilian numbers. The entire report was manipulated to make that path seem like the best choice for a Tuesday. Corbin detailed the terrible plan. The convoy was set to enter a marketplace filled with 1,400 civilians. The mission would have ended in catastrophe. During the ensuing pandemonium, the actual target, the location holding the hostages, would have been ignored. He let the weight of that information settle. The enemy guarding those 14 hostages is anticipating our arrival from the north. They have no idea we have found the other location. The truth hit her with the force of a punch. The opposition had their entire strategy. Someone from their side had betrayed them. The atmosphere in the room grew dense, and the true scale of the threat became sickeningly clear, far worse than she had imagined. She whispered his name, Sims. Corbin nodded gravely. Sims, plus at least 2 more from the contractor. The Naval Criminal Investigative Service has them. His gaze was intense. The enemy has our old playbook, but they are completely unaware of your new one. That is your edge, Lieutenant. It is your only real advantage. Use it. She looked right back at him. We will, sir. He turned to leave, but then paused. He faced her again with one final, startling piece of information. For the record, Holloway has filed a formal complaint against you. The charges were insubordination, unprofessionalism, and planning a mission without authority. She took in the news, her face a mask of calm. Model. And the complaint? She inquired. It's been officially lodged, he replied, inside his file, which is now 200 pages long. Their eyes met for a tense second. Just carry out the mission, Lieutenant. Nothing else is important. With that, he was gone. She took 30 seconds to absorb his words before focusing on her duties. The operation was set for 4:30 in the morning. A profound, focused stillness settled on the base, the kind that comes when everyone understands the risks are high. 22 operators got ready to depart, accompanied by 4 canine teams. At the front of the formation stood Remy with Diego Flores, a quiet shape in the early dawn. Zara addressed her team. She avoided a grand, motivating speech, as those were for leaders who lacked confidence in their own strategies. Instead, she offered 4 simple facts. 14 people are in that structure, waiting for a rescue they doubt is coming. The enemy believes they know our strategy. They are mistaken. Let's go. Nothing more was needed. As they boarded the transport, Webb commented to Garrett, just 4 sentences. Garrett did a final check on his gear. 4 was plenty. The convoy departed, using the southern approach she had planned 30 hours before. There would be no attack from the north, no bustling marketplace, and no 1,400 civilians would be caught in the fight. Their advance went smoothly, putting them 4 minutes ahead of schedule. As they closed to the 800-meter point, Remy made a soft sound. It was not an aggressive bark, but a trained, specific signal indicating people were close. Flores raised a closed fist. The entire team dropped to one knee in a single, fluid motion. Zara came up next to him. What is he sensing? Flores kept his attention on the dog, who was sniffing the air. He detects several individuals inside. He's working to tell them apart. After a moment, Flores knew. They are under duress, high cortisol. They are not combatants. Zara realized it instantly. The dog was signaling the hostages. She looked from the target building to her squad, then gave 2 quiet hand signals. The team moved into their entry formations with practiced precision. Remy and Flores took the lead position on the right side. She depended on the dog's powerful sense of smell to know who was behind every door. The events of the next 22 minutes would later be documented in dry, technical reports, completely removed from the intense reality. But a single moment, an instant that would be forever burned into the minds of all who were there, was about to unfold. It happened 14 minutes into the operation. Near a rear entrance of the building, Flores and Remy stopped. The dog took a solid seated position. This particular, trained signal meant only one thing. There were living people on the other side. Flores waited for Zara's signal. She observed the door for a moment, and then gave a sharp nod. The door opened to reveal 14 hostages. The sound that came from the room was something no training could have ever prepared them for. It was the sound of hope flooding back to people who felt they had been forgotten. It was the sound of pure, overwhelming human relief. Zara was the first person to step across the threshold into that room. She did a quick scan, confirming 14 civilians, with 12 men and 2 women. Some were standing, but many were not. Her assessment took less than 3 seconds. 4 were in critical condition and 10 could walk, but every single one was alive. She focused on the nearest man, who was perhaps 50 years old and shaking uncontrollably. He simply stared at her, struggling to process that she was real. She knelt down to meet his gaze. "We are members of the United States Navy," she said in a calm tone. "You are safe now. We are taking you home." He clutched her arm. His grip felt frail, but his look was strong. "We heard them," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Last night. They knew the Americans were coming to the market. They said they were waiting." She met his eyes directly. They were waiting in the wrong location. The man just looked at her as the full weight of her words settled in. "You changed the strategy." "Yes," she confirmed, "we did." He then saw Remy, who was moving gently among the hostages, quietly checking on each of them. A woman held out her hand to the animal. Remy paused and let her bury her face in his fur, a quiet sob of relief escaping her. Zara stood and met Flores's eyes. He was watching his canine partner comfort the woman. "He always seems to know what is needed," he said softly. The complete evacuation of all the hostages was done in just 11 minutes. All 14 of the hostages were removed from the building without any problems. The 4 individuals with the worst injuries were stabilized on site before being taken to the medical area. The team had 0 losses, both among the operators and the canine dogs. The mission was complete in 33 minutes. As the last hostage was loaded for travel, Wyatt came to her side. He observed the vehicles getting ready to leave before he said anything. 33 minutes. 34 until we are completely safe, she corrected. Holloway's plan would have taken them 40 minutes to reach an empty building. She needed to say nothing else. The mission's outcome was its own statement. At that moment, her radio made a sound. Corbin was on the other end. His voice had its normal sharpness, but she detected a subtle change in his tone she had never heard from him before. "Cole, give me a situation report." "All 14 hostages are secure," she reported. "Extraction is finished. We are on our way back to the base." There was a brief pause on the line. "Excellent work, Lieutenant." She clicked her microphone twice to acknowledge, then boarded the vehicle. Webb was sitting opposite her. He studied her face but said nothing. He had learned that Zara needed her own time to work through events. The greatest help he could provide was to be quietly there. So he just sat there, a silent support. Beside him, Garrett leaned his head back and closed his eyes, a faint smile on his face. It was the simple look of a soldier who was relieved a mission went without a hitch. In the back, Remy was lying down beside Flores. The dog knew his work was finished and was now calm. Zara looked out at the dark scenery. Her mind turned to page 47 of the mission file. She thought of a single footnote, tucked away in a complicated table of figures. The person who wrote it must have bet that no one would read so carefully at 5:30 in the morning. She recalled the hostage's grip on her arm, confirming that the enemy had been waiting at the market. She considered the alternative, the timeline where she had kept quiet about her doubts during the meeting. It would have been far simpler to just question the Northern plan politely and drop the subject. After all, challenging authority is not encouraged in the military. The entire system is based on the premise that a higher rank confers correctness. The more senior the officer, the more their word is accepted as fact. A 22-year-old lieutenant is trained to comply, not to challenge a superior officer's poor tactics. But her whole life had led up to that single brave moment. 14 individuals were safe and returning home because of one small piece of data, one bold choice, and 29 operators who valued truth more than the command structure. Zara let herself have 30 seconds to truly feel the success. Then she opened her notebook to begin the report for Corbin, who would require every single detail. As she wrote, Webb glanced over at Garrett. Garrett looked at Zara, writing intently in the faint light of the vehicle, just 30 minutes after a successful rescue from an unknown location. He shut his eyes, fully satisfied. Yeah, he said, That was the The official debrief began at 7:30 in the morning and ran late into the afternoon. Zara was at the front of the conference room table, addressing every question with the same sharp clarity she had demonstrated for the past 72 hours. She answered inquiries from Corbin's people, from 2 Naval Criminal Investigative Service agents who had just arrived, and from a lawyer tasked with creating the official summary. She did it all on her own, without legal help or prepared remarks. Her only aids were the notebook from the field and a perfect memory of every detail since the first briefing where she had voiced her concern. For 2 hours straight, Wyatt observed from the rear of the room, a silent presence no one spoke to. The person in command was Agent Patricia Hale, a woman in her 50s with perceptive eyes that took in everything. She had reviewed the Meridian case file well before this meeting. As she faced Zara, her questions were precise and cutting. Lieutenant Cole, did you have any knowledge that Captain Sims was involved with Meridian when you first expressed your doubts? Zara's answer was direct. No, Mao. Were you informed about the 3 previous failed missions? Not about the specifics. Senior Chief Wyatt mentioned them later, but that was all. Then why did you read as far as page 47? Zara did not break her gaze. I read the entire document. Hale paused for a moment. Most officers don't do that. I am aware, Zara stated. They were relying on that fact. Hale made a detailed note, considering the information. She looked up. The footnote. Tell me exactly what you noticed and what you determined from it. So Zara explained everything. The weekend supply drop, the weekday market activity, and the lie about 400 to 600 prisoners when there were actually 1,400. Zara reported the details exactly as she had in the briefing, with no feelings or assumptions. Agent Hale paid attention without saying a word. After Zara concluded, Hale remarked, You devised a completely different strategy from that one mistake. Zara corrected her. The footnote revealed the issue. All the supporting intelligence was already available. The building images, the light studies, the ventilation plans. I did not invent anything. I just read the report. Meridian Analytics provided that document, fully aware the truth was hidden deep inside. They gambled that no one would ever examine it that carefully. That is a significant distinction. Agent Hale put her pen down. She observed Zara for a long moment, her face showing no emotion. Lieutenant, we have been investigating this for 11 months. You are the only person who found what they concealed. A heavy silence settled between them. Zara did not speak. It was not praise, but a statement of fact. She accepted it as such. Later that same day, she was officially accused of insubordination, professional misconduct, and conducting an unsanctioned operation. The review board concluded in 40 minutes. Zara was in the lounge, simply staring at a blank wall. It was the first coffee she had in 36 hours. Wyatt joined her, carrying a folder. Legal has dismissed all 3 accusations, he stated plainly. She glanced at the file. How? Because you were obeying a deeply embarrassing public command from a superior officer. Because Admiral Corbin approved your planning session after the fact. And because no one can dispute the mission's perfect success. He allowed her a moment to process the information. 14 for 14, Cole. No casualties, all in 33 minutes. She held her mug tightly. And Holloway? He was relieved of his command while the investigation proceeds. They have taken Sims into custody. The investigators are now examining the entire Meridian Corporation. They believe this issue extends far beyond this one base. He stopped for a second. They suspect this has occurred before, with information being sold to our adversaries. As that reality sank in, she recalled Wyatt's mention of 3 other unsuccessful missions, the ones he never gave details about. She thought of the soldiers from those squads who never made it back. How many of them? She whispered, the words barely audible. It was less of a question and more of a realization. Wyatt knew exactly what she was asking. They are still trying to get a final count, he replied softly. She set her mug down, her body suddenly rigid. I only saw a footnote, she said in a hushed tone. You saw a footnote, Wyatt confirmed. And then you refused to back down, and 29 operators supported your decision. He leaned in a little. Cole, that footnote was just the spark, but it was nothing until you decided to act on it. She met his eyes. He was 20 years her senior, with a depth of experience she could hardly imagine. He had the expression of someone passing a legacy on. This was not about military rank. It was about something more fundamental. This all happened because of you, he told her. Every bit of it. She did not disagree. She simply lifted her mug and took a sip, feeling the weight of the moment. An hour later, Webb, Garrett, and Flores walked in. Flores's dog, Remy, followed closely behind them. The dog went straight to Zara, sat down, and rested his body against her leg. It was a clear signal of trust. She looked down at the dog. She rested a hand on his fur. He does not do that for just anybody, Flores remarked. I am aware, she replied. How did you know? She looked at Remy again. He understood something was wrong in that hallway before we did. I decided if he was watching my every move, I should watch his. Flores looked at his canine partner with a renewed sense of awe, still impressed by his instinct after 18 months together. Garrett took a seat. The investigators are going to need more from us. I figured as much, she said. This is going to take a while. I know. Are you prepared for it? She considered the question seriously. This would not be a short battle, but a long, draining process of giving testimony. No, she admitted with honesty, but I will do it regardless. A smile finally broke across Webb's face, transforming his entire demeanor. Yeah, he said. I had a feeling you would say that. 3 weeks after that, Zara stood before a formal hearing in Bahrain. Rear Admiral Corbin was leading a panel of 5 officers she had never met. They examined a file that condensed 72 hours of her life into cold, hard facts on paper. Corbin recited the report for everyone. He reviewed the timeline, the flawed intelligence, the hidden footnote, the confrontation in the hall, the 29 operators who backed her, the revised plan, and the mission's final result. His voice was completely steady. When he was done, he placed the documents on the table. Lieutenant Zara Cole, he began, this panel has analyzed every single element of Operation Clean Sweep, from your personal conduct to its ultimate success. He paused for effect. All charges filed against you are hereby dismissed and will be permanently removed from your record. Your command decisions have been officially validated. He let another moment pass. The panel's conclusion is unanimous. He looked her directly in the eye. Effective right now, you are being promoted to lieutenant commander. The room was nearly silent. This was official business, not a celebration. There was no applause or cheering. It was only Corbin, 5 other officers, a recording device, and Wyatt, who was mysteriously present once again. Zara stood tall, taking it all in. Lieutenant Commander. She remembered being in the briefing room at 5:30 that morning. She pictured her own hand raised in the air when no one else wanted to see it. She thought of the hallway, the voice on the radio, and the commander who was so sure he could ruin her career. She saw the 29 faces that supported her. She saw the dog that sensed the threat first. And she remembered page 47. Corbin rose to his feet, and the other panel members followed. He walked over to her and extended his hand. As they shook, he said quietly, "You never required our permission, Lieutenant Commander, but this decision now sets a precedent for others to follow." She held his gaze firmly. "And it is also for the ones who did not return from the last 3 missions," she stated. He looked at her with clear understanding. "Yes," he agreed. For them. That was the victory that truly mattered. It was not about the new rank or the formal handshake. It was about speaking for the fallen, the soldiers who were sacrificed because of lies hidden in fine print that nobody else had read. She was their voice now. She always would be. It was a responsibility that would never end. Wyatt was out in the corridor, leaning on the wall with his arms folded. He appeared completely at ease, as if he had not just endured a 2-hour proceeding. When she stepped out, he said, "Lieutenant Commander Cole." She looked right at him. "Senior Chief Wyatt." He unfolded his arms and offered his hand. She accepted it. He held her hand for a second, longer than necessary. "Always read the footnotes." She met his look without flinching. "I never stopped." He gave a single, sharp nod. Nothing else had to be said. At Camp Lemonnier, in the very kennel where this all began, Remy was resting on his bed. That evening, his partner, Diego Flores, came to see him and recounted the entire story. Flores knew very well that dogs do not receive promotions or official ranks. He shared the news with him anyway. After 18 months with a partner that could sniff out lies and track 14 people by scent alone, he was certain Remy understood the important parts. The dog deserved to hear it. Remy lifted his head and looked straight at Flores. Then he rested his head back down on his paws. Flores sat on his own cot, watching his partner. "You knew the whole time, did not you?" he said softly. And that is the story of how a 22-year-old lieutenant discovered her voice in a place that tried its best to take it away. She did not possess a high rank, and the system was not on her side. She did not have the unwavering confidence that people expect leaders to have. The only thing she had were a single report, one tiny footnote, and the resolve to not back down when every single force was pushing her to give up. 29 others stood with her, showing that truth has power, even when it is unwelcome. 14 civilians made it home to their families because one person decided to look closer. And a German shepherd named Remy felt that something was not right long before any person on that base even knew there was a question to ask. This story proves that loyalty is not something that waits for an order. Real courage is not granted by a title. And the truth, even when it is buried on page 47 in a note no one was ever meant to see, will always reveal itself to the person who keeps searching for it. If you were inspired by this story, and if it reminded you that your own voice has power, please subscribe to our channel so you will not miss what is next. We would also be grateful if you would leave a comment below with the name of your city and the word Amen, so we can see how far this message has traveled and know that it connected with you. Because there are some stories that deserve to be heard by the entire world,